Hey, it's Emily. I'm so excited to open back up my free Facebook community and bring back our monthly habit tracking challenges. Each month there will be a new healthy habit to establish and track. And this month, as voted by our habit hackers, we'll be tracking getting in 10,000 steps daily for the month. Will it be perfect? No. Will you see progress? Absolutely. I'll give you a habit tracker so you can see your progress and of course some habit hacking tips along the way. I'll do a giveaway at the end of the month for anyone who turns in their tracker for a free schedule audit and customized habit loops. So come join the free community and join this month's challenge at bit.ly/habit hack your health community. It's linked in the show notes, and let's keep habit hacking together. All right, let's get to the show. Hey girl, do you wish you could make your healthy habits stick, but life keeps getting in the way? Are you tired of diet culture telling you to shrink yourself when you'd rather just find true food freedom, move your body for joy, and feel and look good in your favorite leggings? Then you're in the right place. Think of this as Atomic Habits for women. Hey, I'm Emily Nichols, habit and fitness coach, millennial mom, and Taco Tuesday enthusiast. I'm here to tell you there is an easier way than what we've been taught about health and our habits. How do I know? Because I've gone from former chronic dieter to habit hacker through the power of the system that I'm now going to teach you so you can finally stop dieting and just train for life via your habits. Remember, it's not your fault your healthy habits haven't stuck. We just have to do them differently. Are you ready to habit hack your health? Then let's do this. You're listening to episode 256 of Habit Hack Your Health. Hey friend, welcome back to the show. I hope you are having a wonderful day. Happy July 1st. I can't believe this summer is just flying by. Before you know it, the kids will be back in school. Well, today is a different kind of episode and something that I am personally passionate about, and that is what is going into our foods, right? Now, I talk a lot about food freedom and how this is a personal definition for you. We all have our own definitions of what food freedom means to us, what foods we choose or choose not to put in our bodies. But for me personally, when I think back to this interest and really passion as far as what goes into my foods, this started way back in 2015 when my husband and I did a Whole30 for the first time together. As you know, or maybe you don't know if you're new here, in my former life I did used to be an advanced Whole30 certified coach. It was what really pushed me into the habit sphere, if you will, and creating healthy habits around my food, then my movement, then my mindset. But when we did our Whole30, this required a lot of reading labels on our foods. I remember the first time I went to the store, it was like a 2-hour trip because I kept Googling in the aisles what certain ingredients meant on the labels of the different foods I was picking up. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, if there are this many ingredients on a label of just ketchup and I can't even pronounce them, maybe I should be rethinking what I'm putting not only in my body, but for my boys, my kids as well. What was really interesting with me doing the Whole30 was just really learning about how certain foods affected me, then reintroducing those foods to test it out. And I got to learn about my body, how I responded to certain things. I had brain fog, bloating, breakouts based off of certain foods, and I was able to choose based on my own food freedom what really agreed with me or what not, or what didn't. I also was able to read a lot more into ingredients and trying to pick items that had less ingredients as possible. And as I become what I like to call like a label reading ninja, I started seeing more and more about how our foods were prepared and how they actually get to the store in our plates. And I'll share here in our conversation today, even an instance with red food dye in my youngest son when he was really little, and how I saw an adverse effect for him having that additive. And I came to the conclusion big time after that, just based off knowing my own body, seeing how certain foods affected my children, just becoming more aware of it, right? A lot of times we just don't know what we don't know. But I came to the conclusion that less ingredients, the better. But why is food just so complicated now? And a study that I found from the National Institute of Health as I was researching this episode a little bit more, there are more than 2,500 chemical substances that are intentionally added to our foods to modify flavor, color, stability, texture, or cost. An estimated 12,000 substances are used in such a way that they may unintentionally enter the food supply. So, for example, this includes components of food packaging materials, processing aids, pesticide residues, and drugs given to animals. And when I think of what I'm putting in my body and in my kids personally, I like to think of this not just in the short term, but also long term and what this can do to our bodies. I watched my mom and her sister go through very early stages of breast cancer. My sister and I both got tested for the BRCA gene, and we saw that we didn't have that gene, and both of their doctors concluded, it must have just been environmental. And when I lean into my training for life mentality even more, I look a lot to the women I look up to in my family and what they have gone through and how they've educated themselves over time on what they're putting on their bodies, what movement means. And this episode is meant to educate and empower you to do a little bit more research so you can train for life and hopefully prevent maybe some diseases or mobility issues. The list could go on and on by your choices you're making today. And when I think of this from the lens of Atomic Habits for Women, I know this might feel very overwhelming, right? Convenience and quick and easy meals and snacks and fast food might be our only choice due to cost and time and really accessibility. And I get that. I feel like there can be a middle ground, though, of healthy habits we can adopt when it comes to making food choices for our families. And I have the perfect person to educate us on that today. So today we're chatting with Zen Honeyc. She is the founding executive director of the nonprofit Moms Across America. This is a national coalition of unstoppable moms with the motto, empowering moms, healthy kids. So their whole mission is to educate and empower mothers and others with actions and solutions to create healthy communities. Zen and Moms Across America initiated the first glyphosate testing in America and successfully petitioned Costco to remove Roundup from their shelves. She's the author of Unstoppable: Transforming Sickness and Struggle into Triumph, Empowerment, and Celebration of Community. She's the director of a short film called Communities Rising and the co-founder of the recently launched program called the Neighborhood Food Network, whose mission is to create a parallel food system one street at a time. So Moms Across America is a nonprofit organization who, like I said, their mission is to empower mothers and others in our community with actions and solutions to create healthy communities. A lot of times that just starts with our foods. Like, in this episode, I was like, yes, moms can get things done. I even bring this up. We're such nurturing beings. And I know for me, when I did my research more on what all the ingredients on our foods, and not to mention like how the foods are prepared before they get to the grocery stores and our plates, I know I felt inclined to lean into some more healthy habits to ensure less ingredients and making other choices to ensure I'm not just short-term, but long-term health for not only myself, but my family as well. So like I said, this episode is not meant to overwhelm, but rather to encourage you to not even be like 100% organic or 100% this way or never go have fast food again. That's not reality, right? When it comes to your food choices, this is meant to help give us some habits to ensure we're training for life and educating ourselves a little bit more on what we are putting in our bodies. So make sure to stick around to the end of the episode. I will, as always, share my 3 biggest takeaways from this conversation with Zen from Moms Across America. Alrighty, let's get into our conversation with Zen. Okay, friends, thank you so much again for tuning in to Habit Hack Your Health. I am really excited to have a really important conversation with you all today. I have Zen Honeyc here. She is the founding executive director of the national nonprofit Moms Across America. And I want to dig super deep with you today, Zen, about what is in our foods and how we can advocate for ourselves and make a habit of knowing what's in our foods to help protect ourselves and our children. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Emily. I so appreciate you and your listeners taking the time to learn about these, uncomfortable but very important topics.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, I ask every guest this, and that is, what is your favorite habit hack? It can be anything health related, your home, work, organization. What is helping you today?
Well, right now I'm committed to meditating every morning for 20 to 30 minutes. I'm going for 30. I've been doing that. And that just puts me in a state of clarity and reduces any anxiety that I might be waking up with. There's a lot going on in the world right now. There's a lot to be sort of anxious about. But when you take a moment to take care of yourself, connect with your, inner child or your wise woman or whoever that is that you want to connect with, I think that you have a much more peaceful and productive day.
Yeah, and
I
it's so
do.
hard for us to find silence and peace. So I love that you're and up to 30 minutes. That's impressive.
Thank you. That's what I've gotten up to.
I would say
It
you
took a
probably had to
while to
work
do
up
that.
there, didn't you?
Yeah.
Okay, Zen. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Can you share just a little bit about yourself, really who you are and what has led you to what you do today?
Well, like millions of mothers across the country, this was 12 years ago. I learned about, I was struggling actually with allergies and autism and autoimmune issues and asthma in my children. And I never had those. My ex-husband never had those when we were growing up. So, that was not something we had to deal with. And we were very confused. And then I learned about GMOs, genetically modified organisms, that from Robin O'Brien, another mom, from on a Facebook post, and then from Jeffrey Smith, a man who's been studying about GMOs for like 20 years before that. And I was like, wait a second, GMOs, genetically modified organisms, have been in the food supply at that time for 17 years. So it's now nearly 30 years. And they have not been labeled. Just recently, they started labeling them bioengineered. So you'll see that even at Whole Foods products, it'll say made with bioengineered ingredients. And people think this is a new thing, and it's not. That's genetically modified foods. It's been in the foods for nearly 30 years, and they're only now just labeling it because activists like me and you and other many groups, millions of people across the country raised a fuss about genetically modified foods. And so then they put the label on. So in the process of learning about GMOs and how glyphosate, which is Roundup, is and 80% of GMOs are engineered to withstand Roundup, and it's on the food. Glyphosate is also sprayed as a drying agent. In the process of having this like mind-blowing realization about how the majority of our food is poisoned or is actually genetically modified and is foreign proteins, and the government was doing nothing to protect us from this, I felt this deep betrayal. I also felt a sudden sense of urgency to do something about this. And so I started Moms Across America because I wanted everybody to know about it. And, with this great group of moms that helped me in the beginning. And one of the major impetuses was that I saw a rat study that showed that the third generation of rats that ate GMOs, if the mother ate GMOs, the third generation was sterile. And so I was like, holy cow, we have to do something about this. We have to switch to organic. We have to raise awareness. It's not just enough for my family to eat organic. Everyone needs to eat organic because my son's future spouses are out there somewhere. And if I want their reproductive organs, or they want their reproductive organs to work and be able to experience the profound love that it is to have one's own child, I'm sure it's very profound to adopt a child too, but just to have that, be able to have that experience is something that's necessary for the reproduction of the human race, right? The continuation of the human race as well. We need to do something about this. So I started Moms Across America, and we've been doing this for 12 years now, raising awareness about GMOs and glyphosate and toxins in the food supply. And I'm very, very proud of our moms that have, got started 1,000 events in all 50 states, sent in their breast milk to be tested, sent in school lunches to be tested, fast food. I mean, we have this army of moms across the country that is basically doing the job the FDA is refusing to do. So very happy about that.
I'm not surprised. It is a group of moms leading the way when it comes to this because it's almost like a visceral reaction. Like, how can I protect my child when sometimes maybe you can only afford, processed foods or you need convenience because of our busy lives, or it just becomes a habit or a way of life that you're driving through the drive through and making choices and you kind of just don't know what you don't know. So, and I feel like coming from a mom versus the government saying, hey, here's what's going on. I think everyone's ears just perked up to be like, well, tell me more, educate me more, because I want to be able to protect my children, not just as little babies, but like you said, as they grow up into adulthood as well.
Yes.
I'm just very interested in talking a little bit more about the toxins in our foods. Like I said, sometimes we all know like the fast food or ultra processed foods are not the healthiest option, but I don't think a lot of us are educated enough as far as like another level deeper as far as what is going on with the food that we eat. What are they doing to the food before it gets on our plates? So why all of these like heavy metals, the pesticides and herbicides in our kids' foods? And what is the US policy regarding the regulations of these toxins? Because they're obviously there, they think they're using them for a reason, but it's not for the
Yes.
betterment of our kids.
Yes. So I want to be clear that when our great grandmothers, or maybe great great grandmothers, depending on how old you are, they didn't have classifications of organic food. Everything was organic, right? They were not using toxic chemicals and toxic fertilizers on the food supply. Everybody had small farms. Everybody got their meat from the neighbor down the street, or their chickens or their eggs if they didn't grow them themselves. They raised vegetables and all of that. They got even during World War II, I think it was between 40 to 60% of the food people ate came from their own backyards, like the produce that they ate. So we used to have small farms and small communities where we took care of each other. Because of the trade agreements, the global trade agreements and global elitist corporations running the show, they opened up trade to around the world and they said, oh, well, let's just, get our rice really cheap from Asia, or let's grow, pigs. Let's have thousands of pigs grown here. China owns the largest is one of the largest landowners in the United States and owns pig farms in North Carolina that are polluting our waterways and our soils. And they're growing millions of pigs and then importing the meat back to China, right? So we became this global food system, right? We grow GMO corn and soy, like 95 to 100% of what we grow of soy and corn and sugar beets is GMO here in America. We export about 70% to 80% of some of those crops to other countries for animal feed. However, 80% of the soy that we use in organic food in America, if you're a vegan or vegetarian and you're, eating soy burgers, 80% of that soy comes from Turkey. It comes from the Middle East. It comes from the Ukraine, all those type of places. So we now have a global food system that we are highly dependent on foods from other countries, and other countries are dependent foods from us. So what happened was the government had to say, we're just going to deregulate everything. We're going to let you make GMOs. We're going to let you spray whatever chemicals on it. Whatever you need to do, they said to the agriculture industry, basically, to grow food and make more money for our economy is what you need to do. So they deregulated. It was mostly Clinton that deregulated that way back. And every president since then has not put, more regulations on GMOs. Obama tried to pass GMO labeling, but the Supreme Court had to overturn what he did because it wasn't good enough and say you have to put at least contains bioengineered ingredients on there. So that's what they're doing now. So the government did two major things that allowed for our food supply to be poisoned. One was to classify GMOs as a process and not an additive. And that is false because you can test and find GMOs in the food. And the other one is to do the same thing with pesticides and herbicides. They classified them as a process, not an additive, even though you can test and find pesticides and herbicides in the food supply. So those things do not have to be safety tested and regulated in a way that other foods would be that are considered an additive, right? Like salt and sugar and all those type of things. Another thing that they did is they're just failing. One of the things they're not doing is they're failing to regulate things like red food dyes, brominated vegetable oil, potassium bromate, propyl polyparaben, titanium dioxide, red food dye 3, yellow food dye 6, blue dye 2. These are all things that California, because of, I'm sure, moms there that kids have had reactions, have said, no, we're going to regulate these. And by 2027, any food that contains these items will not be allowed to be sold in California. And 7 other states, I'm sorry, I don't have the list of which ones those are right now, but 7 other states are following suit with that. And I would just urge you to find out from your senators or representatives if your state is doing that as well. And this type of thing, though, in my opinion, should be federal. I'm not a big fan of huge government regulation, but in the sense, in the areas of food and water and safety, I think there should be lots of regulation, and this should be something that would be first. Safety should be put first.
It really gives me chills because yes, thinking about like our great grandmothers, like they didn't have all these processed foods, and they probably didn't notice a lot of medical conditions back then that we have now, that
No, not
we
at
are,
all.
that I feel like maybe more and more people, their eyes are opening up to, well, maybe if I try this with my kid, or not having this, if it maybe helps with behavior issues, like you said, allergies. I know for me, my son was 3 years old, and my oldest son found this old random red box of red Jello in the back of our pantry. He made the whole box. My youngest son ate the whole thing. And it was like he was on 1,000 miles per hour, just zooming around. Like we were doing this, we're doing that. He was just running around, and we were like, Tyler, you calm down, buddy. What got into you? And he's just like, I don't know. And then the next day, it was almost like he was hungover. Like I remember going to the park, and he's a very active child, and he was just like sluggish and lethargic, and just like, oh, mom, I can't. And as I started thinking about it, I was like, he ate that red Jello yesterday. And I was like, I know there's something about red dye, and so some kids are more sensitive to it. And even as a young child, even to this day, he's 12 now. He will not touch anything with red dye. He will look at labels. He's been educated enough to read labels as well. Halloween, he has given out candy if he gets some in his bag that he's like, nah, this is not good for me, because he remembers how it made him feel. And that was a short-term effect. That was just a short-term effect. We noticed it. We were like, okay, we definitely should avoid red dyes or dyes in general. But what are some long-term effects? I know you mentioned, sterilization, autism, allergies. What are some other things that we could probably just kind of keep in the back of our minds and kind of associate with maybe checking out foods that we're giving our kids to see if maybe there's a correlation there?
Well, what you just mentioned is a great example of what every parent needs to be doing. I think if there's any sort of irregularity in your children's behavior, anything from not being able to sleep, constipation, rashes, being irritable, headaches, aggressive behavior, erratic behavior, being very moody. We tend to think, oh, it's just a phase. Kids are going through it. That's actually not true. Actually, a kid's natural state is to be pretty dang happy and energetic. Think about when you were a kid, or when your mom will tell you when they were kids, they were outside playing from 8 in the morning till 9 at night every summer, as much when they came home from school, outside playing. They only came in when they were eating. They were not laying on a couch, sleeping, crying, cranky, erratic, hitting each other. For the most parts, kids were outside playing happily together. Okay, were there spats now and then? Of course, but they weren't shooting each other at school. And you know what I mean? They didn't have the level of bullying on social media that we have now because their faces weren't in screens. So there's a huge difference between how we were when we were kids and what it is, what it's like now. And the symptoms are not just immediate behavioral effects. There's also long-term ones, such as For instance, a lot of these dyes and vegetable oils and things that I just mentioned can cause cancer. So it's not something you're going to see right away. They have been absolutely, from numerous studies linked to cancer. And that's why California is banning. California could not ban these lightly. This is not just like a whim. They have to have tons of studies to show this. I mean, look at glyphosate. The EPA, our EPA, did not look at 67 studies that the International Agency for Research on Cancer looked at. They deemed it a carcinogen. Our EPA did not, right? There's hundreds, if not thousands of studies that show evidence for different things before something even gets on the radar of being banned or discontinued or not be able to use. Europe bans all those things that I just mentioned, or labels them at least. For our FDA did ban red food dye in cosmetics because of the link to cancer, clear link to cancer, but not in food. And they have not banned red food dye number 40. They have not banned, yellow dye 6, blue dye 2, all these other ones. Some have gone by the wayside, like some orange dyes, because they just know that they're so toxic that a lot of food manufacturers are not using them. But what's bothersome is that these manufacturers, or really irritating or highly criminal, actually, if you want to call it what it is that these food manufacturers make these foods in Europe without these toxic chemicals, but they make them here with the toxic chemicals. So that's what's really irritating. And so it's not just cancer and mood disorders and behavioral disorders and learning disorders. There's also reproductive damage. And what I know about for sure with glyphosate, which is on the majority of our food, it's the most widely used herbicide in the world. The FDA is definitely not regulating it at all. And the regulations are ridiculous. Like it's 30,000 parts per billion that can be allowed on wheat of glyphosate, and 0.1 parts per billion has been shown to cause liver damage, organ damage, and sex hormone changes, right? So very low levels compared to what they're actually regulating, have been shown. And so this glyphosate has been shown when mothers are exposed to it, their human baby fetuses have been shown the higher the exposure to glyphosate, the higher the likely of and the more incidences of the anogenital distance being lengthened, meaning the distance between the anus and the genitals on a baby girl lengthens, and that is a masculine trait. That is a masculinization of our baby girls. So we don't know what that's doing to their reproductive organs, to their sense of their sexual identity, to their mood, their behavior, their ability to procreate in the future. We just don't know. And this isn't something that's in practically every single meal you eat if you're not eating organic. And even then, may be contaminating a percentage, maybe 10 or 20% of some organic foods because of rain and water and drift and all of that. So this is something that needs to be banned immediately, especially spraying it as a drying agent on oats and wheats and peas and beans and legumes, grains, where it doesn't wash off, doesn't dry off, doesn't cook off. The 80% of our exposure to this chemical herbicide, glyphosate, is through the desiccation, the drying, spraying it as a drying agent. And the other exposure is through using it as a weed killer, right, around crops that have been genetically engineered to withstand it. So there are so many side effects, I can't even name them all. And scientists like Stephanie Seneff, who's one of our advisors, MIT a scientist, links them to 40 different Western diseases that were not around nearly as prevalently when our mothers were children. There's just been an explosion of these chronic illnesses, and it is primarily due to glyphosate and these other toxic chemicals and heavy metals and things that are in the food supply. And all you asked earlier, why is this happening? It all comes back to industrial chemical farming, agrochemical farming. Because what happens when you plant a monocrop field of corn, right? All the same type of corn. It's not like some corn, some zucchini, some wheat, some, vegetables, some legumes, some beans, like farmers used to do. They used to grow food for themselves and their community and would have to be a diverse food. Now they're just farming to feed Asia, right? They're growing a soy. And so they just grow thousands of acres of soy. And what happens when you do that is that the soil gets depleted. First of all, it's GMO, genetically engineered to withstand herbicides. So they're spraying herbicides on the soil, killing the organic matter in the soil. Then they have to put fertilizer in the soil. And what's in both the fertilizers and the pesticides? Heavy metals, because there's chemicals from the petroleum industries and those contain heavy metals. So that's why the toxins are getting into our food supply, the pesticides, the herbicides, the heavy metals, and then food manufacturers say, oh, we've got to make this cheap food, which is corn and soy based, fun looking because it's not nutritious. It's not healthy. It's not going to make you actually feel better. We need to make it look really fun and tasty. So they put all these food dyes in it, and they put all these preservatives in it so it can sit on a shelf for 3 years at your 7-Eleven, and it doesn't matter, that Hostess cupcake or ding dong or whatever, that will be appealing to somebody to eat, and they can sell it cheaply. So that's what's happening with our food system. Because we have gotten away from the small local farms, we've handed over our existence to multinational corporations that are growing food in other countries or processing food in other countries. We send a lot of our chicken to China to process it and then send it back. God knows what's happening in the meantime, right? So, and the holding tanks that these containers are bringing our soy over to us, they're spraying the inside with all kind of pesticides because they don't want pests and bugs to get to the food in the meantime, right? We don't know what's being sprayed inside of that. There's all kinds of chemical exposures that are happening today because we have an industrialized food system, which needs to change. Absolutely. And it can, and it is changing.
Yeah. That makes me almost like nauseous, like hearing all of that, right? Because there's so many, like you said, the different types of Western diseases that are around, or the cancers or autism and all these other things that are so prevalent now. If we just changed the way and got back to the basics of growing food, finding a safe way, like obviously Europe has done a better job. Like I know I've seen
Yes.
on Instagram, they'll say like, here's what's in a bottle of ketchup in the US, here's what's in a bottle of ketchup in Europe. And it's like, why isn't the US just doing that? Because it's all about money, which is really scary and frustrating and frustrating in so many different ways. My mom had breast cancer a couple years ago, and we all got tested, my sister and I, like for the BRCA gene and everything. And they're like, oh, you don't have it. It must have just been environmental. And the way they even treated her cancer was very chemical and very industrialized in that way too. And I feel like with the ladies listening, I don't want anyone to be like scared and be like, well, what do I give my children? Because we obviously cannot be 100% perfect as far as like what we are giving our kids, but we can create some habits to educate ourselves on what is in our food. So what are a couple habits a mom listening to today could employ to help give our family some safer foods, whether that's reading labels or, like you said, shopping organic? What are some other examples of those then?
Well, my favorite thing is to cook on Sundays, to cook a bunch of meals on Sundays, to make it fun, to plan ahead. You can save about 50% of the amount of money you're spending on your grocery bill by actually planning your meals and having a list on the refrigerator. We do that now every week, and everybody knows what we're eating. It's mostly for dinner, but we will, because my kids make their own lunches for school. I found early on that if they do that, they eat it. If mom makes it, they're like, so they choose, I supply the food for them, but they make their own lunch. They choose from what's available. And so for dinner, we put down what we're eating, and then I cook ahead of time some of those things. Like I might make the meatballs ahead of time. I would roast the chicken ahead of time and then use that chicken for 2 different meals. Then I'll make chicken broth with the carcass and make what I call juk. It's a Chinese porridge with it, So maybe not every week, but most weeks we will do that. And we always have rice and beans in the house, mostly usually just waiting. It's in the fridge and it's cooked, and granola bars or muffins or, some type of egg, like an omelet or something. I mean, no, not an omelet, like a quiche is just ready and waiting in the fridge. And this really cuts back on going to fast food places. I mean, I don't go there anyway because I know what's in there. I haven't gone to a fast food place in probably 15 years, and my kids don't either, right? So it's just not what we do. So you can do it, but you do have to cook ahead of time. You do have to be prepared. And if you do eat out, you do need to know the places that are safer than other places. And you can go to momsacrossamerica.org. I know we don't have tons of time on this podcast right now, and see the fast food places that how they ranked and what they, were. We didn't really rank them actually by numbers because some had some pesticides and some had higher glyphosate and some had high heavy metals and some. But I can say overall, Chipotle had the lowest level of glyphosate. Did have some pesticides, but did have the lowest levels of glyphosate. And they have invested money into chemical-free robotic weed processes, like some little robot things that will go and burn or cut the weeds along farm. Yeah, they have invested money in that. So I'm very impressed by what Chipotle has done. And while I'd rather not eat it all the time, if we are going to eat out, that's one of the places that we will eat out. Other places you should know, Panera Bread had the highest levels of glyphosate. Arby's had the next. It was in the wheat. Yeah. And Sonic Burger had the highest levels of lead. Domino's and Pizza Hut had some of the highest levels of pesticides. And unfortunately, it was on the vegetable topped pizzas. So the vegetables are what bringing in our high levels of pesticides, not glyphosate, but other pesticides, right? And we found an aviary contraceptive in a Chick-fil-A sandwich. We also found it in 4 school lunches. So it was even more prevalent in school lunches than it was in the fast food samples. And when that was surprising because fast food suppliers are what supply food to the school lunches. So we think that school lunches are getting the worst of the worst food. Heavy metals in 100% of the fast, very concerning levels, up to 1,000% higher than what the EPA allows in drinking water in fast food, and up to 6,000 times higher than what the EPA allows in drinking water in school lunches. So the most important thing to do is to buy bulk organic food, prepare ahead of time, and have that food ready. I'm like, and really make your own granola bars. You will save so much more money on snacking. Have your own, you can even, make your own kale chips or make your own potato chips or, French fries. You can save over $900 a year just by getting a 5-pound bag of organic potatoes, cutting them up and making healthy fries. I just bake them in the oven with olive oil and some seasonings. Over $900 a year just by doing that twice a week for a family of 4. So you can save a lot of money by cooking ahead of time, preparing. And doing this podcast with you right now has just convinced me we need to do a whole bunch of memes on the side by side of cooking organic at home, the cost at home, and the cost, eating out at restaurants. We've done this before, but we need a resurgence of this because the cost of food is so expensive right now. Eating out, you're dropping $100 at least. And for a lot, most places for a family of 4, and that type of food can go a long way if you're buying organic rice and beans and minimal amounts of meat, but lots of vegetables and produce. That can go much farther if you're buying and cooking at home.
Yeah, that is actually a habit we teach here is every Sunday, making a plan for the week of what you're going to have to eat throughout the week and just cooking ahead the ingredients. And you can piece together meals based on what you have and how busy your schedule is. And we'll make sure to link in the show notes so everyone can go online to Moms Across America and see what restaurants you have listed on there. That's really cool about Chipotle as well. That's super duper cool. And like you said, buying organic is probably the safest route as far as like your produce goes, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
As much as possible, especially your berries, your strawberries, your apples.
Mhm.
Vegetables with a covering on them are not quite as important with that if
Mhm.
you're on a strict budget. But I always say buy the thing that you eat the most of,
Mhm.
organic. So
Mhm.
if you're eating bread with almost every meal or pasta or rice or potatoes, make sure that those are organic. And if you do eat a lot of potatoes because of the heavy metal testing we've done, some potatoes and sweet potatoes can have heavy metals because of, the soil, the way
Okay. Yeah.
absorbing the fertilizer and stuff. I would just highly recommend that everybody's taken some kind of detox thing. If you're not
Mhm.
sweating on a almost daily basis or a couple times a week, from exercising or sauna, then please make sure and I'm not a doctor, but what I hear for detoxing is, bentonite clay, activated charcoal, cilantro in your smoothies, things that help your body to move, that bind with the toxins and move it out, is very important. So please consult a doctor and
Yeah.
see what type of detox program you can be on, even your kids on a regular basis. We're just exposed to way too many chemicals
Yeah.
to be doing
Yeah.
this.
I've been doing my own research on doing like heavy metal detoxes and whatnot. One of my friends just started doing it with her kids and she was testing herself and then going to do her kids just so she knew what to expect. And unfortunately, I feel like that's something everyone can maybe do a little research on. Like you said, talk to your doctor to kind of see if like maybe we need to cleanse our systems a little bit of as much as the best efforts we're giving, but we need to kind of detox as well. So for everyone listening in, if they are fired up and they're like, what can I do to help change these policies? What would be the next step?
The next thing really is to get to know your senators and representatives office. A lot of people don't even know who's there, who theirs is. And I understand we all have very busy lives. But really looking up, contact my senator, contact my representative and find out what their email address is and send them an email and let them know you want a safe, non-toxic, nutrient-dense food supply, and you are only going to vote for people who will partner with you to do that. They have to know that their vote, your vote, is on the line, that they are going to put safety first. And that means things like right now the FDA is waiting on Congress to be able to have the mandate to regulate heavy metals in baby food. They're waiting on Congress, on our elected officials. Did you know there's no regulation for heavy metals in baby food except for applesauce, some guidelines on baby food. It's not rules, they're just guidelines, and candy. That's it. And it's just because consumers, like our group or Consumers Reports, has found high levels of lead and heavy metals in these things. The FDA is not, they're not regulating heavy metals in any foods except for those three. And some of it's not even regulation. So they need to do a better job. And we need everyone to tell their Congress and their senators, you need to let FDA do their job and to regulate heavy metals in food. They also need to regulate pesticides in a much better way than what they're doing right now. I compared the list of what they're actually testing for, pesticides in the food, and what the most commonly used herbicides and pesticides are from the EPA. The FDA is only testing for 2 of them out of the top 25. And the California EPA is only testing for 3 of them. And then they're coming out with these reports saying, oh, 1,200 food samples that we tested are 98%, 98% of them are not exceeding the maximum allowable levels. Well, first of all, the maximum allowable levels are ridiculous. Like I just told you, 30,000 parts per billion when only 0.1 parts per billion causes harm. And second of all, they're only testing for 2 out of 20, the top 25. So this is really fraudulent regulation. They need to do a better job, right? And we need to tell them that this needs to happen now. So please contact your Congress and your senators and representatives and let them know that this is imperative, that they do a better job. And it matters. I have had a legislator tell me that legislators are more afraid of moms than any other grassroots group out there. So if you are hearing this and you want to lobby with us, we need a team of people to go to DC and ideally every month, and we need funding for this too, because it's expensive, just to get there. Like we're not even being paid extra to go there, right? Like some lobbyists make $20,000 a month. We're just talking, we just need travel covered. That's all. I will hoof it for free, So get us there, and we will have a team of moms to meet with senators and representatives and educate them about what's going on. Many of them don't even know that glyphosate is being sprayed as a drying agent on the food supply. Really, like they need to be educated. So please support moms across America if you can financially, or join our team to go to DC, or contact your senators and representatives and let them know how important this is.
Then you took the words right out of my mouth. I was like, if anyone can get it done, it's moms. And I was like, I bet a lot of these officials maybe just aren't even educated on what's going on. They're looking at all these other issues coming across their desk. And when it comes to just safety of our children and what we're putting in their bodies, that should be a number one priority. And it's really sad that it isn't. So we'll make sure to link everything for moms across America in the show notes. Go contact your local legislators, senators, anybody who will listen, because if a group of moms come together, we are going to get stuff done. That is,
we are fierce.
sure.
I do want to say, if you're not a mom, that's okay. Our mission is to
Yes.
educate mothers and others with actions and solutions
Sure.
to create healthy communities. And we have many women that are supporters that are not moms. They're moms
Sure.
of fur babies, just as important.
Oh, yes.
And dads and aunts and uncles and other people too. So please do join us at momsacrossamerica.org. Sign up for our newsletter. We have a Moms Connect call on Monday nights and a neighborhood food network call where we support you in growing food in your neighborhood. And it's most Monday nights, maybe not everyone, but most Monday nights unless I'm traveling. And I'm also on the New MDs, which is on the third Tuesday of the month with Dr. Stephanie Seneff and pediatrician Dr. Michelle Perro. It's called the New MDs, Moms, Doctors, and Scientists Working Together to Heal Our Children. And that's available on Rumble, and it's live on the third Tuesday of the month. So please do join us in those places.
Super. And we'll make sure to link everything in this show notes so you can connect with Zen, connect with moms across America, start educating yourself more, feeling empowered to help protect our children. But Zen, thank you so much for this super important conversation. You made it really simple and empowering for us, which I really appreciate.
I love that. That's part of our mission. Thank you, Emily, for allowing me the opportunity to do that. And everybody who's listening, please share this podcast like crazy and support your community to know the truth about what's going on in the food supply. And it's like when you share this, you're giving them like the golden ticket to a new pathway to health. Because when people find out this information, they will start making changes and our whole community will get healthier, less violent. I didn't even talk about the aggression that's linked to fast food. Less violence, less car accidents in your community, healthier people coaching your kids, healthier babysitters, right? We can do this. We can create healthy communities.
And it all starts with food. It all starts
with
moms. That's it. So
thank you, Emily.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate this conversation.
Thank you. Me too. Take care.
Zen, thank you so much for this informative, educational, and empowering conversation. I know after I had this conversation with Zen, I talked to my husband about it in length because he's very interested as well as far as how our foods are prepared and how it gets to our plates. And like I said, I hope this episode really helps you to feel a little bit more educated, helps you feel empowered, and not to be 100% perfect or feel like you're doing something wrong, but rather educate yourself and create some healthy habits around it. Not to be 100% like organic, free and clear of all the things, but even if we just did, like we always talk about with habits, 1% more, it can make a big impact on not only you training for life, but your family as well. So let's talk about my 3 biggest takeaways from this conversation with Zen Honeyc from Moms Across America. So number 1, notice how certain foods affect not only your kids, but yourself, right? I think a really great habit to kind of maybe analyze this is to keep a food log. You can write down maybe some items that you're eating also for your kids and notice any behavioral issues. I know, like for example, this has nothing to do with how the food was necessarily prepared, but my husband learned over time that legumes, so beans, cause his elbows to break out in this crazy eczema. And we noticed when we took those away, that went away. And we've noticed as we've tried to reintroduce them here and there, the eczema always comes back. So he just avoids legumes because it makes his elbows really itchy. Same with my son. We do not buy any foods with dyes in them. Every once in a while, he might have a piece of candy or something from it. But like I mentioned in the episode, he is very quick to remove any type of dyes, especially red dye, from his diet because he knows it does not make him feel good mentally, and especially the next day he's coming down off of it. But you can do that with yourself as well. It's all about, just like with any of our other habits, being super intentional, tracking the data and using that data however you want. So if you notice there's something going on with your kids, some type of change physically, behaviorally, just take a look and maybe keep a food log of what they're eating and see if you can see any parallels from what they're eating. And same for you as well. Next, I think buying organic is a great idea if that is affordable to you. I think reading your labels is a fabulous way to feel a little bit more empowered about what you're putting in your body. I also think growing your own garden is amazing. This is such a fun activity to do with your kids. Now, I have to be completely transparent with you here. We do a garden every year, but my husband is the gardener. He grew up watching his grandparents grow a garden. His mom still grows a garden. I'm just not good. He always sends me that meme where like the plant is dying while you're drinking your coffee. I kill all the plants in my house. So not the plastic ones though. They're fine. But think about some more creative ways. If you're able to buy organic, I love that. Like she mentioned, if there's something you eat a lot of, buy organic of just that. Read your labels. Try to get less ingredients. Grow your own garden. If you're going to a fast food restaurant, do your due diligence, see what you can have, and have your kids take their lunch to school if that makes sense for you, due to maybe school lunches not necessarily meeting the requirements that you require for your kids. That's personal to you though, of course. And then lastly, I love how Zen brought up, batch cooking. Do a bunch of Sunday cooking, planning ahead, which will actually save you money and time and allow you to have a little bit more control and empowerment around what foods you're putting in your body. I mean, eating out is so expensive right now. We have a rule in our family just to help with our budget where we only eat out one time a week. If we eat out like on a Wednesday, then sorry about you boys. We're not going to go out usually later in the week. That even includes Starbucks and everything like that as well. I love doing a Sunday meal prep session. It doesn't have to take a long time. We actually teach a Sunday reset around my 21-day plan. We teach in the Healthy Habits Accelerator, my signature program. Grab it in the show notes if you need it for this summer. It's a really great time to do it and have you set before school starts. But empower yourself, have some foods ready to go. That's a really great habit to do every Sunday as well. So, like I mentioned earlier, moms can get stuff done when we all come together. We want to be able to protect ourselves and, of course, our children as well. Like I said, this episode wasn't meant to be political or saying you should or should not eat this or that. I wanted this episode to be educational, informative, and empowering. And I hope you come away with that feeling and some simple little habits to put safer foods on your plate and your kids as well. So I am rooting for you. Let me know what you thought of today's episode. If you want to connect with Zen, everything is linked in the show notes for Zen, Honeyc, and moms across America. All right, Habit Hacker, I'll catch up with you later this week. Hey girl, real quick before you go, if you are ready to take action in creating your own habit loops, then I want to invite you to take the 3-day Habit Loop Bootcamp email challenge. You'll learn how to create your own cue, routine, and reward from that Atomic Habits for Women philosophy that we've shared here on the show. And it's also available audio only too, so you can take it on the go while you're mom Ubering around town. Just go to bit.ly/habitloopbootcamp. It's linked in the show notes as well to start taking action now. And if you love the show, the biggest way you can support me and other mamas like you is to leave a quick written review so we can help more mamas stop dieting and start training for life via habit hacking. Love and appreciate you.